I'm going to go ahead and review how much thread to use. So remember, we don't tie knots with our needle. So the general rule of thumb when you're hand sewing is you want to basically put the top of the thread between your thumb and your index finger, go to about your elbow, and then just double it, and then cut it. Oh no, twisted. Okay, there we go. Sweet. Okay, so once you have that, you'll take your hand sewing needle and you're gonna put it through. Good thing we turned the lights on. Through the end. Okay, so notice I'm just letting the thread drop down. If I held it right here, it's about to my elbow, which is great. No knots. Don't tie a knot at the top. Don't tie a knot at the bottom. Anytime you do hand sewing, we'll do that tacking it down, and that will serve as your knot. Okay. It's also called sometimes taking a stitch. So tacking it down or taking a stitch is the terminology that they typically use when hand sewing. Okay. So when we start this, first thing to know when you're sewing snaps, okay, there's two ends to it. So you've got, once you separate it, because they'll be together on here, so make sure you don't lose it. You've got the socket side, okay, so there's like a little hole that it will go in. And then you've got the side that has the little ball on it, okay, so when they snap together, it snaps just like that, right? Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to make sure that we do that correctly. So you'll do one at a time. For this, I'm just going to do them across from each other so you guys can practice actually snapping them. And to start, I'm just going to find a spot on this end and I'm going to do my tacking it down. So just really nice and close, you're going to grab a couple of threads. So about 2-3 threads from your fabric, and you're going to pull that all the way through, just like so. Leave a tail, okay? And then you're going to go in the same spot again, exact same way you went in, and then you're going to put your thumb on that tail so it doesn't follow through. And you're going to make sure to pull tight. If you've got any of those loopy guys, just make sure you pull tight. We're going to do that again. I knew this was going to be loopy. My thread's twisting. So this is good. You can see it. If you individually pull on one of those threads, it should bring it through. And then we've tacked it down. We can cut off our tail so we get it out of our way. Okay, again, just like the buttons, you would want to typically use similar thread color so that it would match and blend easier. But for this demo, I'll just use red so you can see it a little bit better. And then just like our button, okay, it's hard at first, kind of like the shank button, moves around a lot. And then once you get it going a couple times, it'll hold it into place. But essentially, there's 4 different holes, just like on the flat button, and we're going to go through just one of them to start. Okay, it doesn't matter which one. Just make sure, since this is the socket side, just make sure that that socket is facing up, so when you clip it over, if you sew it down, then you won't be able to snap it in. Once you have that, okay, you gotta, it's a little squirrely, so you gotta hold it in place, okay? And then you're gonna take your needle, and so you've come up through the hole, you're gonna go down on the outside of the metal, okay, just like that, right next to it, and we're essentially gonna rinse and repeat. So we'll come back up through that same hole, down on the outside of the metal, up through that hole, down on the outside of that metal. And then we'll always travel from the back side, just like the button, and then we'll do that, and you go through each one. I'm gonna move this just so it's out of my way. So I'm gonna make sure I pull every stitch tight, okay? So if you look closely, that's going to have it so it's right next to your button, okay? And again, it's harder at the beginning because it's moving all over the place. But then if I look on my back side, you want to come up through that same hole. Now I'm going to try also to sew in the same spot or just about. So it just limits, it's not gonna be in the exact same spot like the button is, but you do wanna try to limit being like all over the place. Just makes it look a little cleaner. So I came back up through that same hole and I'm gonna go right next to it. Make sure every stitch you pull tight. And you're gonna go down, pull it tight, and then you're gonna come back up through the same hole. You'll do that about 4 or 5 times. Pull tight. So as you can see how it's moving a lot less now that I've done a couple of it. It's just definitely starting to stay in place. It's a lot easier once you've gotten to this point. And I'm gonna go back down. I'll do this one more time. So again, I'm coming up through that hole. Well, you gotta kind of play a little bit of the guessing game. I was doing great. Hold on. Okay. Then, once you have it so it's secure, this one's not going anywhere. You're gonna travel to the next hole. Okay, so from the back side, so you're gonna kind of poke through. So now I'm at a new hole. You guys see that? So now I've come through the next one. So at the very end, you'll end up having like a little kind of square on the back side of your snap. And go outside of the middle, straight down, pull tight. And then we're gonna come back up through that same hole. Make sure you pull tight. You always want to check on both sides that there's no loops. Go back down. Try to go in the same spot. Pull tight. Back up through the hole. Pull tight. One more time. Pull tight. Okay, now you've got 2 out of 4 done. And we'll go to the next one. So when you do the traveling, you do have to guess a little bit about where the hole is going to be. There we go. Come back up, make sure we're pulling tight. We'll go back again, right next to the middle. There's a really good visual on your direction sheet that sort of shows you where to stitch. So again, you'll kind of get your groove, just making sure every stitch you pull tight. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, as you saw at the beginning. Like that one I got really lucky. I got some good guessing there. Okay, we're getting more secure. So I've got 3 out of the 4, right? And then the last one will come up through the last hole. There we go. Pull tight, make sure there's no loops. And then the nice thing about this is you're gonna do the exact same thing with the other piece of the snap. You just have to make sure that the positioning is so that they snap together. Back down. And then once we finish this last spot, we'll finish on the back side and you'll just do your tacking down. Again, you're not going to get them all in the exact same spot for this one because you're moving around to the different holes, but you do want to try your best to make it look as clean as possible. Okay, and then we go to the back side, flip it over, and then we're going to pick up just about 2 or 3, right wherever you came up is fine. Just pick up a couple of threads. Do it once, twice, 3 times, pull tight, cut off your thread, and then when you flip it over, just got to make sure that that's not going anywhere. It looks like that. Okay, and then you would repeat the same thing with this guy. That was the socket, so make sure when you sew this one, you have the ball side up so that after you sew it, they would snap together.